Nicely Theater Group is preparing for their production of Oliver, and today we're talking with two of the cast members, Sara Grice and Kevin Starnes. Thank you both for being here.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for having us.
Brian. Thanks for having us.
So, Kevin, you're currently about 2 weeks out from opening night. How are you feeling about it so far?
Oh, it's been an adventure. Um, you know, I it's I was not actually that familiar with Oliver before I got cast in the show. And so it's been really, really great just watching everything come together, watching the child actors especially. And then because my part is so intertwined with Sarah's, we've had to do a lot of work to kind of get our chemistry together and whatnot. That's been really rewarding because I think that our scenes are really intense and need that chemistry.
Sarah, were you familiar with Oliver before auditioning, or were you also kind of in the same boat?
I was semi familiar with Oliver. Always knew Nancy's got a big song called As Long as He Needs Me. So I've always been familiar with that. Knew some of the beginning parts with the kids, but I didn't know like the full
Mm.
story. Um, didn't realize it was as dark as it is because you kind of think a lot of kids, it's going to be a friendly, happy musical.
Sure.
But it's pretty dark. So getting to sit now that we're running the whole show and actually seeing the scenes progress and seeing the other characters come in and the parts that they play in the story, um, I really have fallen kind of in love with the musical, more so than I had when I auditioned. But Nancy's kind of always been like a bucket list. So that kind of drew me to it. But I'm absolutely just having the time of my life. And like Kevin said, getting, to work with actors like Kevin, like some of the other people in this show, and really learning to form those bonds, it really kind of even just takes how much you like a show to the next level.
I have to say, Kevin, I was very similar to you where I didn't know much about when I was researching for this. I was like, I don't know much about this. I had to contact my business partner and be like, hey, you know a lot of musical theater. What is going on with Oliver? And so for those who maybe aren't familiar, I was wondering if you could kind of tell us a little bit about what's happening in the story.
This is a show that like I've known some of the music to, and I think that's going to be familiar to a lot of people. I mean, I don't know many people that don't know Food, Glorious Food, if for no other reason than the Ice Age movies. And I've learned some of the other songs just from my experience in choir when I was younger and whatnot. And all the memes of Oliver himself going, "Please, sir, can I have some more?" So it's eh, I kind of when I first kind of went through the script, the whole time I was thinking this is like the darkest possible version of Annie I have ever seen. Like Sarah was saying, it's a very dark show, which I think is going to surprise a lot of people. Oliver is an orphan. He's at an orphanage. He's being forced to do work, not being fed much, but it's not like there's some comedic elements in that setting, but it's not like it's not as comedic as it would be. Not to keep harping on Annie, but it's not like that at all. And it's the rest of that story is the rest of that is like to an extreme where like Oliver gets sold into labor and he eventually escapes from that, and then like the kind of the saving grace of that for him is falling in line with a bunch of child thieves, which is just kind of just this weird thing to say out loud now that I'm hearing myself say it. And there's this relationship that forms between him and Fagin, who's the adult ringleader of the child thieves, and it's great to watch Fagin's character evolve because of basically Oliver. Oliver is like almost like this force of good that changes everyone around him. And and then my character comes in as a huge antagonist, and there's this dynamic between Nancy and Oliver that fundamentally changes my character's relationship with Nancy, up until the end where it boils down to this huge very final scene, and where Oliver and Fagin get a happy ending, and we'll leave it at that without spoiling too much.
Absolutely. And Sarah, you know, when you talked about the kind of darkness of the show, there's a little bit of darkness.
Mhm.
That is quite heavy, you know, what Kevin's kind of describing there. How do you feel like Oliver really does kind of balance that light aspect throughout the show?
Yeah, definitely. I actually, when I got this part, I went back and I read the actual novel because it is based on Oliver Twist, written by Charles Dickens. And,
Right.
you know, Oliver, he is, like Kevin said, he's kind of like this source of good. Like there's just this sweet innocence about him from the very beginning, like him straight out going up to, you know, the guy that runs the orphanage essentially, or the workhouse that he's living in, and is asking for more food. He's kind of, you know, the kids kind of egg him on to see how that responds. And you know, he's just constant, there's just this sweet light about him. And even from the moment he meets my character, like the first thing he does is he bows to me. So everybody kind of wonders where this is coming from an orphan. What, you know, what is it in him that makes him kind of this little gentleman? So you
Sure.
really learn to love Oliver straight off the get go. You want more for him. You want better from him. And I think that's something that resonates with my character, who, you know, for lack of a better word, has kind of been on the streets, and she was in Fagin's gang and she was thieving, and now she's a little older, so she's probably doing some other things. And she's had a really rough life. So she meets this young man, and all of a sudden she's like, I don't want this for him. And so
Sure.
she kind of is the one that's really pushing for him to come out and get his happy ending at the end, even at, you know, some expenses that, again, we will leave to those who come see the show.
For sure. Absolutely. And so Kevin, you are playing, like you said, the protagonist. You're playing Bill. But who do you feel like Bill is to you? Or how has maybe your relationship with him changed since kind of taking on this role?
Um, you know, I've in kind of researching the role, because it's the script is very much like, you know, Bill enters a scene, everyone is scared of him, and then Bill loses his temper at something. And it's to try to make a villain more than just that is really been the
Right.
challenge of this role. And you know, something that I've kind of held to throughout, you know, many years of theater and opera and whatnot, is that the best villains don't know they're villains. They think they're
Sure.
doing something right. And so it's, you know, it's been kind of figuring out, you know, what is his relationship with all of these people? Why is he the way that he is? Is he really that bad, or is he living off of just his reputation? That sort of a thing. And
Mhm.
so it's been kind of walking this fine line between showing, yes, that Bill is capable of all these horrible things, but not making it his sole defining characteristic, so that when it does happen, it's that much more impactful and hopefully terrifying, because that's what I'm going for. So it's been really interesting. You know, is when I for years I I've been kind of the funny guy. So the past year, suddenly villains have been thrown at me. I'm like, okay, this is a huge switch for me, but it's been a heck of a journey so far.
I mean, it has to be really cool as an actor to be able to kind of switch it up and try something like
Mhm.
that. But also, I love that you're trying to make him not two dimensional. You're trying to find the whole person within that. What's kind of that process for you then to find that whole person of like who Bill is kind of through? I know you're doing some research you mentioned and stuff, but like how do you find him within the words that are on the page?
Um, so my opening song, right off the bat, is called "My Name," and all of the essentially the entire song is everyone gets terrified once they hear my name. My name is so terrifying that no one will even speak it. And so right off the bat, I'm thinking, have I ever done any of these horrible things, or has this just been the rumor mill and I have gone with it, you know?
Oh,
And so then it becomes, what does it look like if I'm not really that guy? If I'm just the reputation? What do I do to convince people that the reputation is real? And so there's this slow build to the point where I actually have to live up to it. And is that scary for me? Is it just a moment where it happens and I suddenly like, oh God, I finally crossed that line? And so it's been a lot of putting him in situations of what would this look like if the whole legend isn't real, and then
sure.
from there just kind of going through like the mannerisms. I'm someone that when I am getting into the character, I have to develop the physicality of it first to really
Sure.
make it real. And so it's like, it's finding the walk. Does he have a swagger? Is the swagger real? Is it manufactured? Is it, there little things by how I interact with Nancy, how I interact with Fagin. Am I jealous of Oliver because suddenly everyone is finding out that, like, oh wow, we can be a good person and still have good things happen to us, whereas I'm the guy that's saying no, we have to be terrible, we have to instill fear. And so it's been kind of putting all those situations around and playing with it and going, what would this look like?
Wow. Okay. I love that. I you don't usually see like I love this play of like, did he like are they just rumors? Because I think that a lot of the times we see villains who they do all those horrible things and they do live up to their reputation, but this idea that maybe you don't, and then as a psychologist, it's always interesting when you see somebody have something kind of thrust upon you, and then it's not exactly true. And do you fulfill that role? Do you do it? Do you fulfill that role well, or is it kind of scary or daunting? And so again, that adds that the kind of layer and depth to Bill.
Yeah, that's
And
that's really I think really kind of like the motivation for me is to try to do this in a way that hasn't maybe necessarily been done before, um,
sure,
and isn't just, okay, here's the bad guy, let's do bad guy stuff.
sure,
I just have to say, just to kind of feed off of Kevin's question, in him developing that point of view, it really helped me because there has to be a reason why Nancy loves him so much. He
Mhm.
can't
okay,
just be this awful, terrible person 24/7. There's got to be a reason. And she even says it, this is who he is. This is who he thinks he has to be.
sure. I love that though too, though that because you're right, there does have to be a reason, and like if he's
Hmm.
just an awful guy, why would Nancy love him? You
Right.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but you had mentioned, Sarah, that Nancy is a dream, kind of like a dream role for you. What
Yeah.
is it? What is it about Nancy that you've just kind of been drawn to?
Um, I mean, as a vocalist, I tend to get drawn to shows where there's like this big, like 11 o'clock number. But I mean, as long as he needs me is like one of the most like iconic musical theater songs out there. But beyond that, I tend to connect with these characters who are struggling with their own personal identity a lot.
Sure.
Um, it just seems to kind of be a constant in the roles that I've played in my acting history, where I tend to struggle to be kind of that rough around the edges person with the heart of gold.
Okay.
Um, so I love the joy that Nancy brings to the show. And I love how like Dickens put it. I read a whole like somebody did like a whole like thesis on this storyline and Nancy, and even Dickens himself said it, that Nancy truly is the heart and light of the show. She is
Okay.
someone that has found positivity regardless of her situation. And I feel like I'm very much like that in my own personal life. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that drew me to this role. Um, and it's been really special to get to understand her a little bit more on a different depth.
Was there something about her that you learned like that felt different once you started to kind of embody her?
It's interesting that you asked that because the other night, I had like gotten a text message in between act 1 and act 2, and all of a sudden I turned to one of the other actors who plays Bet in the show, and I looked at her and I was like, okay, I got it. It's happy, happy, happy. There's just something about Nancy, like the moment I step into her shoes, everything else melts away and she just is. And that's something that I have to, thank Mitch Master, our wonderful director too, is any time like he'll have a note for me and he's just like, but you just become Nancy the second you step into her world. Um, so it's just been a completely different experience for me getting to play this part.
It's kind of awesome though that it feels like it's, I don't want to say easy because I know that's not easy, but like to become Nancy, there feels like there's an ease to that.
Yeah, sadly, it's hard that, I can easily become someone who is in a abusive relationship.
But when you talk about the
um,
positivity, you're kind of also describing of, you're still finding positive in her, even though that's kind
yeah,
of the situation that she's in. So, it sounds like you're focusing on the positive aspect of it and not maybe on the
yes,
negative aspect of
yeah,
that character
yeah.
and her
And I bring a
relationships.
lot of myself to that because I do tend to be someone who is positive even in the darkest situation.
Positivity is important, especially in today's day and age. So I did get to see you last year in A Fiddler on the Roof, and I've seen you in a few other productions. But how do you feel like maybe your process for developing this character is different than some of your past characters that you've done?
um, with Fiddler on the Roof, obviously that is my all-time favorite musical, I will be honest. It's something I grew up with. So Dido, again, I kind of grew up with her, so I kind of knew her nuances just from, watching the movie growing up, and I played in the pit orchestra in high school for the show, and I've seen so many versions of it. For Oliver, I hadn't even really watched the movie until I got cast in this show. I hadn't seen any previous productions. So where I feel I am with Nancy and where I've kind of sat down is I've really had to take the time to understand her. I've had to sit and I've written like notes out in a journal, creating her backstory. Who is she? Where did she come from? Why did she wind up with Fagin? Why has she stayed with Fagin? Why, does she not get out of this relationship with Bill? And I've had to sit and ask those questions. Also really taken the time to sit down and break down her songs one by one, line by line, and like what's going through her head at this point. So not that I haven't dug deep into characters before, but I recently got into a scene study class as well. So that kind of like gave me even more like knowledge and understanding of how to truly break down a character in a scene. Um, so it's just something that I've worked hard at with this character. So she feels different than the others.
I was gonna say she feels like you're taking her like even like a step deeper than you have with your other characters.
Yeah, yeah. Trying to give her the time she deserves.
So when we're talking about the songs, obviously, this is a song that Kevin, you mentioned that people are going to know the music or will know some of the music. But what music do you feel, or like what songs do you feel like are some of your favorites to perform, or even some favorites from the production that you just love to hear every single night?
For me, honestly, I could listen to any of Fagin's numbers all night. Because Patrick he's such a wonderful actor, and he really embodies the role to begin with, but his chemistry with the child actors it is just wonderful. They all adore each other, and it's very, very obvious, and the energy is just different when those scenes are happening. And part of it is just it has to be when you have that many children on stage, you have to have that level of energy, and any elementary school teacher will tell you that that there's a level of energy you have to keep. And in his what's his first number, not
Oh,
reviewing the situation, but his first number
the
with the kids,
the
got to pick a
pick a
pocket.
pocket, pick a
Oh my
pocket.
god,
Yeah.
so good, so good. Yeah. um and then the other one that I'm pretty sure my entire family is sick of at this point, because I keep singing it, is Nancy's opening of Act 2, the Papa number. It is just a wonderfully catchy drinking song. And it's everything a drinking song needs to be. It's catchy, it's got a good hook, it's repetitive. Everyone in on the stage knows the lyrics because they're in a pub, they're all singing along. It's so fun. And the choreography that has been set to that number is just I think that's the one that's going to have the audience really kind of tapping their feet and humming along to.
That is
I hope so.
awesome. Sarah, how about for you? Which numbers are really some of your favorites from this production?
Um, so from this one, I mean, I always have loved I Do Anything. You know, a lot of people think of Consider Yourself and it gets catchy and it gets stuck in your head, but Cecily Gamara, who plays our Dodger, is just the most captivating 9-year-old I have ever met in my life. And I think that song is just going to, I mean, the audience is just going to eat her up. She's so incredible. So I love that one. And again, that's a song that I get to connect with all of the kids during. So that makes it really fun as well. Um, but a song that I wasn't familiar with that I just died laughing the other night is the Sourberries have a song called That's Your Funeral. And the two actors,
Yeah.
Jared Bugby and Jennifer Horn, are so brilliant with this twisted, dark song because they're undertakers. I think people are going to leave kind of singing a song that they don't know, which I love because that's the most fun about musicals is finding songs that you keep humming on your way out that maybe you didn't know. Because I think a lot of people know Pick a Pocket. I think a lot of people will hum Consider Yourself. I find myself night after night going to bed singing a song called Who Will Buy. There's a quartet in the beginning of it with 4 of our ensemble members, and it is probably the most beautiful singing you will hear the entire night.
Mhm.
This 4-part harmony. It's incredible.
That is so awesome. So with a show like this, with the darker themes as well and a little bit of light, obviously we have things that maybe themes or things that resonate the most with us from this production. Kevin, what do you feel like is the theme that maybe resonates the most with you?
Um, it really, I think that the thing that I come away with from this show the most is just no matter the situation, there is always hope for something better. Whether it's Oliver hoping for a better life because of the lot that he got stuck with, or it's Nancy coming to realize or struggling with she could be in a better spot than where she is. Um, Fagin having this moral dilemma over what he's what his I mean he's running a criminal enterprise. Let's not candy coat it. But you know he has moments where he's really struggling with that, and I think that really at the core of the show, if I could sum the whole thing up, it's hope. And even I mean even Bill to a point, it's there's this he's got his whole reputation, his whole existence is based on this image that he's projecting of strength and fear, and Oliver comes in and damages all of that. And there's a lot of I think there's a lot of struggle on how do I battle that. Do I and it unfortunately Bill keeps making the choice of it's clearly more strength and fear, and it backfires every time. So it's I think that is kind of like the overarching theme that I think that really drives the show.
Sarah, how about for you? What do you feel like kind of resonates the most with you?
I mean, not to, steal his answer, but I really, seriously, what Kevin said is there is straight across the board, this hope throughout the story, especially, you meet Oliver, and I think from the very beginning, everybody in the audience is going to hope for him to find a better life than what he's been dealt. Then you meet Nancy, and it's like she talks about it, and she even talks about, how it's not going to be for me. But then she meets Oliver, and she's all of a sudden like, you know, hoping for more for this child than the hand that she's been dealt. I think you even see it with Fagin and the way he reacts to, some of the things he has. He hides his jewels, and he kind of looks at them, and it's almost like this underlying hope that, he could have had more. So that just kind of, I truly believe that that's kind of like the whole like theme of the entire show, and even a little bit about sacrifice, which again, I don't want to give anything away, but there's there's a sense of sacrifice for the situation to hope that this young man gets a better life.
Both of those are beautiful answers. And I just want to thank you both for being here. And again, we are excited for Oliver to arrive. But thanks for coming on and chatting with us. It's been such a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. This has been fun.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Oliver runs at Nicely Theater Group for 2 weekends beginning on July 17th and closing on the 26th. So get your tickets now and we'll see you at the show.